Welcome to Biztech's Asia's Hottest Startup Show, the show where we feature hot startups across Asia, sharing their entrepreneurial journeys and sharing with us the journey towards becoming one of Asia's next tech unicorns. Now, today we feature Pickupp, an on-demand delivery platform founded in 2017 that claims to be redefining logistics with its transparent, customer-centric service and technology. Now, here to tell us about Pickupp is Crystal Pang. She's the co-founder and CEO of Pickupp. Welcome to the show, Crystal.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. And really thanks for the invitation. My honor to be here.
Now, Crystal, could we start then by giving us an overview of what you do and your entrepreneurial journey so far?
Sure. I'll give you a bit of a background about myself. So I started as an electrical engineer. I did software in Boston for a few years. I then went back to Hong Kong. I've done a few things. I was in investment banking. I was with two startups prior to founding Pickupp. So the last startup I was with is a transportation marketplace where I started seeing there's no real product market fit when someone tried to use like a point-to-point matching platform to handle logistics. So that's how Pickupp came about. So we started in 2017 in Hong Kong, and then we moved to Singapore and Malaysia pretty quickly in 2018 and 2019. And we recently started operating in Taiwan as well. So now we are operating in 4 places, and we cater to all sorts of merchants, SMEs, all the way to e-commerce aggregators, or even MNCs, giving them very flexible logistics solutions by giving them a network such that they can handle deliveries in a very flexible manner, including times when you need to handle peak seasons, like W11, the Christmas, and it's a solution that really helped them to alleviate a lot of these logistics pains.
Okay, Crystal, logistics and e-commerce logistics is a hot space on the internet right now in the investment community. What are the pain points specifically that you are addressing, and what makes you special?
Sure. I think when people think about logistics, a lot of times, they think about, it must be pretty asset heavy, like someone owning a warehouse. There are a lot of sorting facilities. There'll be fleets of like ton trucks or vans running around the city. What Pickupp is doing here, we are a very tech-focused platform, and we're asset-light. And we fill the gap of this market using technology to address the pain points when customers need more than what the traditional 3PL can handle. And that means one is, how do you crowdsource sufficient supply when you have fluctuating e-commerce demand? As you can see, now people just demand things anytime, anywhere, because it's so easy. You can order anything, with a touch of a few buttons, and then
Yes.
things just show up at your house. But what people do not always think about is that how do you predict the peaks and troughs of these needs? Because when you buy, payment is virtual. When you buy, buying on the phone is also virtual, but logistics is physical, it's very tangible. So how do you move things quickly? So I think what we're solving here is what e-commerce players look at. And one is they want a very robust system who can handle fluctuating demand, meaning can you give me 3 to 4x capacity when I want it? And then the second thing is, can you make it reliable? Because when someone order a delivery, you want to make sure it's fulfilled. You don't want to have maybe I can handle it, but maybe I cannot handle it, because it's just more pain for the merchant. But most important, I think the third point is that they still want it to be economical. So a lot of e-commerce clients, if they run their own fleet, that means you will always have a limit or a cap on how much you can put through the system. And when you have more and more deliveries, maybe you started off as an SME merchant, you think it's fine, to fulfill 20, 30 orders a day. But as you get more and more business, which is a good problem to have, you start tackling like, 50 a day, and then 100 a day, and then 300 a day. So how do you manage the logistics. If everyone is running their own fleet, we're talking about a very centralized model, meaning things need to be consolidated before it's distributed again. So what Pickupp is solving is that, do we have a hybrid or a more decentralized way handling these deliveries, i.e., we utilize all this idle capacity in the society. There will be spaces that we crowdsource, like dark stores or even like hubs everywhere, like, nestling in different neighborhoods that we can utilize. Are we able to crowdsource the manpower? Because you can only have this many full-time couriers helping you, but when it comes to peak, you want 5x capacity. How likely can we find qualified people? These people can be students, can be housewives, or they're just utilizing the 2 hours a day or the 3 hours a day in the idle capacity to help you fulfill this delivery. So we help merchants take care of all these so that they can focus on selling. And then we would take care of the optimization, the predictive analytics, and predicting when deliveries need to happen.
So Crystal, as you've been explaining that, the first thing comes to mind is you're the AWS of logistics. So essentially, you can scale on demand. It's an asset light. So I can go to you. I'm a little merchant, but then I can grow very quickly because of you, without having my own. I can work on an asset light model, and that is in essence your business model, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think it's a very good analogy, because a lot of e-commerce players, they sometimes it's very hard to predict what sells and when things are selling at what speed. So what people are really looking for is exactly the flexibility that when I need it, I just want you to help me find, whether it's space, whether it's a sorting capability, or, what is the next available flight, going to, from Taiwan to Hong Kong. Like, if there's a system helping them do that, then they can plan out all these logistics operations in a more efficient way. So that, yeah, I think what you put, what you say, the analogy is pretty much what we are doing.
So now, Crystal, I'm sure your business it looks very different today, because the logistics business pre-COVID and post-COVID has changed dramatically. Can you walk us through the changes that have happened? Because I think because you started in 2017, you rode the first growth wave. Yep. And then COVID hit, and then you suddenly got another growth wave, but with also challenges. Walk us through some of that.
Yeah, so pre-COVID, I think e-commerce has already taken off. So we service a range of merchants already. So these are more the household names, like e-commerce aggregators. People already shop on these platforms. But what they expect, or in terms of the SLA, when things will be delivered, is very different. I think before COVID, most people are generally okay. You tell them it's a 2 days deliveries or it's a next day delivery. People are like, that's fine. I can wait 2 days for my shoes, or I don't mind waiting a few more days if it's like a cross-border delivery, sending to my home. So these are the typical merchants that we service. But once COVID hit, we see a very big change in terms of two things, right? In terms of one, the clientele has a very big change, and then the second is also the requirements, or the SLA is also
okay. Tell us about how your clients change in what way.
So in terms of the clientele, one is there's a move from just e-commerce merchants to O2O merchants. Okay. So a lot of retailers.
So O2O is online to offline, just
online to offline. Yeah. So maybe they run 20, 30 retail outlets, and things were okay before COVID. But when COVID hit, social distancing, and then people are not going out because of the anxiety, like they want to reduce the chances of being contracted with COVID. So that means a lot of these retailers are hit pretty hard. So we also see the trend, maybe before 2019, when we pitch to some of these retailers, we tell them, we have a very flexible way you can handle store to door, or we can give you a very flexible inventory balancing system so that you can use these outlets as mini storages. This idea was a bit foreign to them. I think to them it's like, okay, it's a very interesting idea, but I don't think I need it. But after COVID, I think they need the extra, well, they need additional revenue pretty like desperately, because otherwise, people are not walking through the doors. So then I think a lot of these clienteles like move from doing pure e-commerce to a mix of online to offline slash also moving to online. So I think this is the first big change. The second is also the types of deliveries that we're handling. Before COVID, you'll see that it's mainly like fashion items, mainly electronics, things like that. But after COVID, we see a surge in terms of groceries, in terms of baby products, in terms of pet products, because I think people don't want to go out, and if you have a baby home, you try to minimize the time to go out. We also see a surge in terms of medical needs. Something a bit surprised, Pickupp did not position the company to serve the medical sector in the past or pre-COVID, but I think it's coincident when it hits a lot of these PCR tests, a lot of this COVID-19 samples, when people are being quarantined, how do you make sure you get tested timely? And then there's like a very short shelf life, where these samples can be valid. So that means you need very quick deliveries, which is like 2 hours, and it doesn't make sense to rush them all to like a central laboratory, right? So there's a very big project that we work with the government in Hong Kong, where we'll rush it to the nearest neighborhood clinic so that they can get these tests done pretty timely. And then we're also working with some telemedicine companies, because a lot of people with chronic illness, they would not want to go out, but they still need to get the meds and they want to minimize visiting the doctor. So we started doing a lot of medicine deliveries during the time.
So Crystal, obviously what's happened is the range of partnerships that you have needed to execute has changed very dramatically. Who are your key partners that make all of this magic work?
So I would say this network, to make sure a network like this works, first and foremost, you will need the right kind of technology.
That's where you come in. Basically, you have that layer. That's you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because at some point you will need to understand, okay, if someone needs to handle like a food delivery versus someone who needs to handle medicine, do they need different qualifications? That means they need to receive different training. That means they need to, maybe someone taking samples will need to have goggles and gloves and certain boxes. So how do we make sure we have different cohorts of agents that we can mobilize them so that the right or the trained and qualified people see the right orders. So I think that's the most important part. And then the next thing is also linking in a lot of these supply chain resources together, because after all, Pickupp is an asset-light network, but we do rely on there are a lot of satellite network partners like these dark stores in the neighborhood, and then we also rely on a lot of these whether it's like a van, whether it is like someone on the motorbike, or whether someone walking that comes onto this platform and provide these services. So I think we're pretty lucky. We're very lucky because when COVID hits, a lot of retailers, they're also looking for additional revenue, because no one is visiting the
physical stores. Yes.
Yeah. So we managed to find partners who quickly change and are willing to pivot. So start taking on, it's just temporary storage of certain orders and they'll go out again. And then we'll also see a lot of people, when they need flexible income, because of whatever reason in COVID, they need to take a no pay holiday, people or F&B outlets hit very hard, they're just not getting enough jobs. So these people will come onto the platform as well, just because we are one way, to provide them this flexible income opportunities.
Now, you've just raised a 20 million funding round. But before that, obviously, you've had a journey that you started in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
Walk us through your funding journey up to your latest funding round.
We had we had 2 rounds of institutional funding before this.
So do you have a friends and family round in the 2017?
There is. I mean, I put in my savings, and so did some of my family and friends. It's a pretty I would say it's a pretty bold move. Thinking back, because back then in 2017, I know e-commerce is a sector that will grow. I'm also pretty confident that Asia is the place to be. But I was not. I don't think anyone can predict COVID though. So back in 2017, it was a pretty big leap of faith. So I was very glad, to have support from friends and family, and including the prior round in 2018. We had a pre-A round with some institutional investors, including the Alibaba Entrepreneurs Fund, who led the round, and then we had another round of funding, from another investor, the Vision Plus Capital. Up to this round, we have some strategic investors like coming in. I think the way we look at things is that maybe before 2019, a lot of these investors, they look at more just financial gains, but I think like for investors who came in in the previous or more recent rounds, they're taking a pretty strategic view. The strategic view is that this whole e-commerce is changing because of time compression. Compression, what people expect now is just quick commerce. Everything needs to be delivered in a much faster manner. That means things to be much more decentralized. So I think these investors are now taking a view that they will welcome something like a Pickupp, like a company like Pickupp, where we try to bit more out of the box and be very flexible, like by not owning any assets, but in a way link assets or resources together to make sure the supply chain works smoothly.
Okay, and how are you going to deploy this capital that you've just raised?
We have two big focus. I think the first big focus is that we want to make sure we deepen our presence in Southeast Asia. We already have operations in Malaysia, in Singapore, and in Hong Kong. So I think very recently, we also in Malaysia, we started Penang, and then we started opening other cities, linking up these demand, and also make sure that we're not just satisfying the intra-city needs, but we're also linking up inner city and even crossing borders. So deepening and penetrating these markets is one. The second is also making sure that we deploy the capital in Taiwan as well, because we have some strategic shareholders, and they will they also they're going through certain digital transformation and thinking about logistics in a very different way. So we are working with them very closely, trying to make sure the Pickupp solution, will be implemented in Taiwan as well.
So Crystal, looking back in your entrepreneurial journey in the last couple of years with Pickupp, what are 3 things you think that you've done really well?
If I have to name 3 things that I've done well, I guess the first thing is definitely being very persistent, being super persistent. I think and in 2017, when this idea came about, it was a good idea, but it's also not, we've pivoted and then we've had a few iterations. So not giving up and really keep executing and believing, this is the right way to go, by not owning any assets, but, being the technology layer. I think that's something that wouldn't be possible, had I just given up, in 2018 or even 2019. So, and then I guess the second thing is also making sure the expansion and the way we launch is timely and quickly. Because if you look at the places where we operate, if you only operate in one single market, it's very difficult to justify to a lot of investors saying that I'm very scalable and I'm also it's something that can duplicate across markets.
Exactly, because scalability is not easy. I think very young entrepreneurs, that's one of the biggest mistakes they make. They think that it's easy to go regional.
Yeah, so I think being able to scale quickly to different markets is definitely something I think we've executed in a correct way, so that now we're seeing good results coming back. And then I think the third one is also us having a very data-driven mindset, because I think when we work with a lot of our merchants, it's very easy to fall into this trap of just going with, if I'm very used to using a traditional third-party provider and, all I want you to do, can you just give me 20 vans and 20 trucks or just why don't you start operating a warehouse and I just give everything to you, then and operate it the same way as if there's no disruption, using the same old centralized model of operations. I think what we have done well in the past is that we managed to convince a lot of early adopters, a lot of our merchants. I would say there is like a token of like confidence to say, okay, I'm going to try something new. I think Pickupp is a good solution and I'll give you the buy-in, because a lot of these merchants have been with us, not just, for a few weeks or a few months. They've been with us for years. So I think we are very appreciative as well, to have so many merchants, with this courage to kind of jump on board and try out our solution.
Now, Crystal, then on the flip side of the equation, what are 3 things that you would change or would have done differently?
I think a couple things that, well, first of all, I jumped into this sector without really knowing logistics. This is something that,
you worked at Uber before, you had some idea, right?
Yes, I think transportation is something, I have some experience, but I think a matching platform, a point-to-point matching platform, right, is very different from logistics. I had no prior background. So even with Uber, it's a lot of like, just intra-city point-to-point kind of quick matching, right? But when you start working with bulk e-commerce clients, you're talking about, okay, someone is ordering 20 pallets of items of e-commerce products. They're shipping from a plane, arriving, custom clearing, and then moving through the supply chain. I think these are stuff that we learned it the hard way, right? While we move from city to city, we realize how complicated the supply chain is. So that's something I wish, if I knew I need to be in this sector, maybe I would, looked up or be a bit more involved early on. And a second thing, I probably would try to do more, I think, is in terms of the talent acquisition.
Okay.
Had I known, I need to be in this, so many places, so many cities, maybe, I wish I would been more open and be a bit more proactive, knowing more friends. There are times when we, especially after COVID, we need to hire, and then it's very difficult because from just by interviewing someone, you don't know, like this candidate seems like very very competent. But what I learned over time, some of my management team as well, were my ex-colleagues. So knowing someone that you've worked with, they know the style, they know, how to scale a business, and then having them work with you, even though you are distributed, like right now we're distributed across like 4 cities.
Yeah.
It it makes things a lot easier. So that's why I wish I have more and more of these like network and friends, early on, so that my talent acquisition will be much faster.
No, but, Crystal, it's been a fascinating conversation, but do you have any final thoughts that you would like to leave us with before we conclude this interview?
So I think this is definitely a very exciting journey. So every day is almost like a roller coaster ride, but I'm very hopeful, and I'm very optimistic about the logistic scene in Asia. It is definitely changing at a much faster pace, much than anyone could have expected. So whoever is watching or is tuning into this, I would really strongly urge you to kind of look around. Like if you happen to see Pickupp operating in that area, try us out, and we're very open to any kind of feedback.
Now, Crystal, thank you very much for being a great guest and for coming on the show.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian. Really happy to be here. Thank you.
Now, we've been speaking to Crystal Pang, co-founder and CEO of Pickupp. And I'm Brian Fernandez on Biztech's Asia's Hottest Startup Show. This interview will be on our various social media platforms as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thanks again for tuning in.